Hello, my dear friends. Good afternoon, everyone. My duty is to welcome you all on behalf of Convergence of Cultures, which is an organization under the Universal Humanist movement founded by Silo of Argentina. Convergence of Cultures is not an organization. It's a voluntary movement. We don't have president, we don't have secretary, we don't have a treasurer or a bank account even. So there is no power hunger, ego clashes, and vested material interest. We are a part of pure, genuine humanist movement that we call Universal Humanist, New Humanist Movement. We work for a universal human nation where man is the central value, not money. We don't believe in dividing people on differences. Instead, we celebrate the differences. We believe and work for cultural harmony and peace worldwide. We promote cultural mingling and pluralism, which is need of this time. Today, we are in the beginning of a campaign called National Campaign based on the theme, Stop Hatred. We are one universal human nation. And I'm happy that seeing our invitation, many people from many states of India and even from abroad have participated, attended this meeting. I'm very happy about that. I welcome each and everyone on behalf of COC, that is Convergence of Cultures. Especially welcome our beloved friend and renowned humanist, Mr. Sudhir, who is hosting this meeting from Mumbai. Also, special welcome for our renowned speaker, Dr. Parimal Merchant from Mumbai. Welcome, sir, and welcome you, everyone, once again. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Abuka. I just introduced Dr. Parimal Merchant. He is a renowned humanist staying in Mumbai. He is a professor and head of the department of the Jain Institute of Management. Now he is working abroad. I think he is participating in this meeting from Gulf area. And so many other members of the humanist movement and Convergence of Culture are also participating, particularly Nailish from Mumbai, Aziz Master from Kozhikode. So many others are there. So I heartfully welcome Dr. Parimal Merchant to deliver his talk. Please, sir.
Thank you. Now, the subject for today is global crisis and new humanism. Nowadays, this word global crisis is not new, need not be explained. It seems that it is a quite common word. Generally, what is meant by it? At a global level, we talk about climate change and things that is going to happen, talking about sustainability and many things at a global level. Coming a little closer, more to the human world, we talk about games of power between different countries and wars and exploitations that we see around. Coming closer, even closer home, within the country, we talk about the growing disturbances and hatred and violences. Even coming closer, within our home, we talk about growing communication gap, growing generation gap, and even closer within us, we talk about feeling of isolation and frustration and depression. All this together consists of general understanding of global crisis. Now here, there is some aspect that need to be understood. What happens is that we are so overwhelmed with our time, that is in the time in which we are living, and our space, maybe our state, our country, or some such thing, that sometimes we lose some proportion. So let's take some example. We do talk about Ukraine war going on for more than a year. Seems to be a big issue. But what about Vietnam war? The casualty in Ukraine war is 1 lakh. The deaths in Vietnam were 4 million. Ukraine war is more than a year. Vietnam was more than a decade. What about World War I? 40 million people died. World War II, 53 million people died. So sometimes it is good to enlarge our perspective, little longer and wider horizon. We are talked about COVID because it was very close to us. Globally, in the period of COVID, 7 million people died. Whereas in the Great Plague of Europe in 1315, 50 million people died. 7 million and 50 million. We are talking about some deaths around. China, Cultural Revolution, more than 30 million people died. So what is important is not to get overwhelmed with some incidences that is happening around us, but to get a much broader global perspective of the evolution of humanity. So way back in 1992, Silo wrote a letter to my friends. One of the letter, that is specifically third letter to my friends, begins with the line, in this era of great changes, individuals, institute, and society are in crisis. Individuals, now when did he speak about it? 1992, 30 years before. And the further line adds what? The pace of change is going to accelerate further, and so is the crisis. So that crisis that we see around now is not new. It was somewhat hinted at 1992. But even in 1992, it was only re-explained. The understanding of global crisis was actually verbalized, put in place, clearly defined way back in 1966, more than 70 years ago. It was defined at that time, it was realized, it was explained that the social and personal crisis of that epoch, 1960s, demanded new answers. Whatever was happening around society, whatever was happening within personal crisis, it is this that demanded new answers, something that is at the depth of human being. It was that which required new answers. We can use a word, human consciousness, if it is not too difficult. You can just simply say, crisis is not just in the world, The crisis is within human beings. That is how in 1966 study groups were formed and humanist movement began to take shapes. The whole objective of humanist movement was to understand the needs of human beings. What does human beings need? And then produce the means to really go towards meeting the needs. As the things are in the world,
Others,
Prakash sir,
please
please
mute.
mute your mic.
as are in the world, because of the deep needs of the human being, things were considered more or less like determined. And the humanist movement proposed to really create means, the ways of helping human beings move from this predetermined state to the state of freedom. I have been working in humanist movement for more than 40 years. And we would use the word moving from the ground of determination. Everything is determined, life has to go in a particular way, to the ground of freedom, which humanity is moving towards. Humanist movement, the initial years of the formation itself, talked about, discussed about, and proposed to work to explore answers to the global crisis. It was proposed to work for humanization of the world. Why? Because the way the world is today is not humanized. Human being is the not most important thing. Power and profit of few is more important than human being as such. And the evolution of humanity will be to move towards a world where all human beings gets equal opportunity. Simply putting it, became a kind of a drive to work for humanization of the earth. This drive is not local, is not for a particular law, a particular situation, a particular place. It is a global phenomenon. And so right from very beginning, humanist movement proposed to work as an internationalist force. We are talking about the global crisis of human being, not human being of a particular city or a particular country. Human being as a whole is going through crisis overall. The work has to be also global. So humanist movement proposed a project Humanize the Earth. Approach as internationalist. There could be rich country and there could be poor country. There could be advanced country and there could be third world countries. All these adjectives are not natural. They are all given by human beings. So to do away with it, humanist movement proposed working as anti-discriminatory without any kind of discrimination. And whatever position I am placed is good. But whatever position others are placed, how do I feel solidarity with human beings all over the world? So humanist movement proposed objective of humanization of the earth, working at a global internationalist, anti-discrimination, and with solidarity. And it defined this clear way of working, active non-violence. So there is violence, there is non-violence, and now here it is active non-violence, opposing all forms of violence non-violently. All this to do what? To deal with the global crisis and create an answer for the humanity. At that time, it was discussed that really speaking, in human history, time to time, crisis happens. Though this was discussed in 60s, it is today that more or less we can see the whole population feeling internally a sense of crisis. It was explained that whenever there are some values which are fundamental to society, and whenever these values that are so fundamental of the society starts losing the meaning, human being feels shaken. I lived in a time where a father was respected by the son or daughter of the children. To me, family as a bond was a fundamental value. Now when I see my children or the young people around not caring for the family or not caring for the parents, I am shaken. What is happening to the world? And nothing great is happening to the world, but something which was so fundamental to me start losing meaning. This is what we see happening around, where people are feeling lost. There is a sense of nostalgia. Once upon a time, things were like this and things were like this. Today, see what is happening around. This is a frustration. And this is a great indicator of personal crisis. It was explained that when the class dialectics intensify, there are different classes in the society. Either they can work harmoniously or they are pitched against each other. When they're pitched against each other, it is not that they actually want to do it, but internally they are going through a crisis where they find it easier as a solution to be pitched against each other. So in the time of crisis, what we notice in society is society divided into various parts, and each part is supposed to be opposed to another part, and there is a lot of resentment, hatred, and tensions among groups. This is indicator of the crisis. What we are seeing now, particularly when we see in India, as if it is happening today, all this was explained in the initial work of the humanist movement in the 60s. So our values are shattered. People, different classes are pitched against each other. Generations seems to be having a very big gap. Parents who used to believe unquestionably in religion are shocked to learn that children are questioning the religion. Parents who have grown up with the idea that we are living in democracy are shattered to learn that the young people do not see that there is any democracy. Parents who are used to believe there are some people who are ordained to have power. Once upon a time it was a king, now it is a time of some politicians, and it is a privilege to come closer to them, to touch hands with them, are at a loss when they see young people now care nothing about who is in power. They have no respect for the politicians. So all this is a generation gap. One generation fully involved in their system of belief, believing that this is how the world is now at a great distance with the new generation, which is questioning their belief. Then comes some other indicator of crisis. It was clarified that when everyday activity, whatever we are doing, is glorified and becomes irrational, this is something, again, an indicator of a crisis. And finally, whenever there is a general feeling of suffocation, when people can't explain what is happening, but are not really at ease with themselves, all this is a kind of description of the society, irrespective of a particular incidence, irrespective of a particular person in power, irrespective of some war or some weapons or some kind of violence. Really speaking, is indicated that crisis is in human being, that inside the humanity. And it is this which is giving this feeling of suffocation. Humanist movement really identified all this way back. And the whole objective of humanist movement was to work to transform humanity, the human being, work on an individual and social transformation simultaneously. There was some other explanation that whenever this kind of crisis happens, when people are shaken, they try to take hold of something, whatever comes in their power, whatever comes in their reach, whatever becomes their hope, and then they would like to stuck to it. So things which are irrelevant gets magnified. Something which has nothing to do with the real human evolution, human activity, has tremendous power, as if this is what determines the life. So something like sports, some games, some fads, some personalities, some leader, some spiritual leader, they all are given a kind of power which is little difficult to define, but something in which people put all their hopes, ready to bear all the other things, just hoping these things will change our life, it will help me to live better. Instead of trying to understand their challenges, they try to put somebody else in power as if magic will happen. There is no rationality. There is craze. There is a madness. All these are indicators of crisis. So crisis that we are talking about now, crisis that most of the people are talking about now, is not something new. It has been simmering. It was visible almost 50, 70 years ago. And actually to address this crisis only, that humanist movement was born. So Silo, during writing letter to my friends in 1992, in the first letter, he wrote something terrifying, that let's be very clear that if all that we are talking about is some past glorious time, the world that is disappearing, Silo clarified that those of us who believe in human evolution are not depressed by the changes we see. Whatever is happening is leading humanity to the next stage. We are living in the pre-human history of humanity, where human being is not important. And whatever is happening around is leading towards the direction of creating human world. Silo also indicated in the first letter to my friends, those who believe in human evolution would like to see this crisis accelerates further so that the old will move out and the new will come, which is far more content related to humanity, related to human being, related to the needs of human being, not of one country or one place, but internationally, globally. Just to give some different perspective today, it was way back in 1790. You can consider almost 240 years ago. There was a French Revolution. For the first time, humanity challenged the power of kings who were supposed to have a divine power to rule over the world. It was challenged and talked about values of liberty. Each human being has liberty. It talked about equality, equality of all human beings. And it talked about solidarity or fraternity, where the all humanity is connected with each other, feeling about each other, thinking about the evolution of the whole humanity. It was taught way back in 1790. And what do we see today? Even today, it is not settled in human mind, human consciousness. We still believe in the divine power. Earlier they believed in king, and today we believe in politician to rule over us. We can see clearly that in society around us, it is a drama of democracy. We all know very well that a professional politician who makes his career as a politics alone can in no way remove the corruption of the system. We know very well that it is all human beings, all people who need to come forward and contribute towards building a human society. Still, inside us, in our consciousness, it is so deeply rooted that we keep talking about our kings and our ministers and our politicians and hoping that they will do something positive. We know very well there is a big gap between formal democracy and real democracy. We know very well that voting just once in 5 years and leaving everything to professional politicians is not going to bring about a change. Yet, inside, still we are believing in them. This is what is changing. One generation believes in all that, but as we see human evolution, other generation doesn't believe in that. This is what is our journey of new humanism, in which we are not carried away with the old notion, but rather we work, we understand the needs of the human being, or what we call inner urge that is visible among a lot of people around us, though at a very subtle level. The word used by Silo was a new sensibility that is visible around us. And what is important is not really to get obsessed with some incidences happening here and there, which are nothing big compared to all the things that has been going on, but rather align all our energy to connect with this new sensibility, the hope of creating a world far better for all human beings. So we can talk about some indicator of this new sensibility. One generation is used to believe that all this is idealistic, utopian, imaginary, is now coexisting with another generation who is not believing in the old values and who seems convinced that human world need a different perspective. So what are they? So let's talk about this in the form of humanist attitude. Treating the human being as the central value. This is point number one. Is robotization good or bad? We don't talk about good or bad from economic point of view or from technology point of view. Rather, let's look at it. Is robotization good or bad from human beings' point of view? Robotization is going to bring down the manual and difficult work, labor that people have to do. Certainly good. If it is going to deprive human being of their livelihood and their food and their shelter, it is certainly bad. So we are not going to look at things from good and bad from any point of view other than impact on human being. To put this as a criteria, and a corollary comes. If human being is the central value, and there is nothing about human being, be it political leader, be it money, be it business, be it national boundaries, everything is at the service of humanity to facilitate coordination, to facilitate working together, to facilitate transactions. By themselves, they do not become a rule over human being. So that is a corollary coming from this statement. Human being as a central value means nothing about human being. And the second corollary would be no human being below another. A person born in America and a person born in Sudan, both are being born at this stage of human evolution where electricity is discovered, where all the transport and different means are there, where health is being available. So a child born in Sudan is nowhere lower than a child born in USA. This is the spirit of humanity. Nothing about the human being and no human being below another. This is the heart of the humanist attitude. Similar, you can put it in the other way. It also means equality of all human beings. Just because somebody has more money is good. But as far as all the social life is concerned, all the things are concerned, everybody should have equal opportunity. All human beings are equal. This understanding is radically different than whatever prevailed so far, which is being shaken up with this crisis around. So far, differences in human being were taken as granted. There is a master and there is a slave. Master has a right to whip the slave Slave has a duty to please the master. Human beings are not equal. And that is why history so far this can be called as a pre-human history. In human history, first time we will realize this whole idea that all human beings are equal. Again, for one generation, this is shocking, unbelievable, it can never happen. And to a new generation, this is the way things should be. May or may not happen overnight. Obviously, it will not. Clearly, humanity is moving towards this direction. So when one black man is being killed in America, lakhs of people are on the street, not necessarily only black, treating human being. It is not black or white. It is not rich or poor. It is not educated or uneducated. It is human being which is at stake. This is already visible in many fields around. So it is a little weak, it is a little subtle, it is gaining momentum. There comes similarly along with treating human being as the central value and equality of all human beings comes a very important dimension of respecting personal and cultural diversity. We are living in a time where cultural and personal views of one part of humanity are supposed to be superior over another part of humanity. We are living in a time where one part of humanity is considered as civilized and another part of humanity is considered as uncivilized. The civilized so-called part of the society picks up among themselves to bring about changes in these uncivilized people by imposing their values on them. So the notion came, some superior human being and another inferior human being. Instead of recognizing and celebrating diversity of people, we are coming up with the idea that everything should be uniform. So it will be tried, it will not work. It will be resisted. Internally for human being, you are you and I am me. We are both human, but we are different. No two human beings can be same. So instead of trying to make uniformity among all, the new attitude, the new sensibility is to respect personal and cultural diversity. And Dr. Abu introduced the Center of Convergence of Culture. That is what he was referring to, celebrating personal and cultural diversity. That brings, if all human beings are equal, each one is in their own way, then nothing can justify harming some human being for the benefit of some other human being. Putting it simply, nothing can justify any form of violence. Physical violence is very well known, which is witnessed, and it's believed as if that is the only form of violence, though factually, it is a kind of violence which is the least harmful. The other forms of violence, far severe harmful. If you hit somebody with a knife, maybe if the person will bleed for a while, maybe there will be some stitches, and after some time, the wound will be healed. When you deprive somebody of education, when you deprive somebody of opportunity to get a livelihood, life ruined for the whole of life. Economic violence, religious violence, racial violence, psychological violence, different forms of violence. Anything that that harms human being or hinders, prevents, stops his growth, his development, is violence. It can be called by one name or another. Anything that harms human being or hinders his development is violence. And the new sensibility talks about opposing all forms of violence with active non-violence. This is something that requires courage. It is opposing all forms of violence so that all human beings get equal opportunity to grow. There are four things. When we talk about diversity, and obviously we have to respect the freedom of thought and belief. I am always right from my point of view. The other person has a right to think in his or her way. I have some belief. I'm free to have my belief. Others are also having belief and they are also free to have belief. It's respecting freedom of thought and belief of every human being. Learning to coexist is something that in the old paradigm, in the old kind of society, in the traditional way of working, including the current time, is new. That is what is coming out if you talk about respecting each human being. If you respect each human being, you respect the freedom to have their own thought and own freedom, own belief. But we live in a society where the structure is given. There are rich and poor. There are owners and workers, people in power and people not in power, educated and uneducated. And all this is going to live forever as of absolute truth. The society is like this only. The nature of the human being is to fight only. The nature of the human being is to exploit each other only. All these statements, which are given as absolute truth, the new attitude is talking about questioning it, challenging it, and developing a new knowledge. Developing knowledge beyond what is accepted as absolute truth is what is an indicator of this new sense, of this new approach. We can call it new humanism. First letter to my friends, Silo writes that this new sensibility is already visible. And in the beginning of the letter, he says that there are authors, there are people who are saying that humanity is going to, there is going to be a doomsday. He says that humanity, which has evolved for thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, is not going to perish just because some people behave in some particular way. It's a fundamental faith that future is bright. It's a fundamental faith that humanity is evolving. And the new humanism is reaffirming this faith within themselves. So they are not disturbed when they see things around. Because there is clearly a hope that after with this crisis, already the new things are emerging. And very soon, this old will be replaced by new. We have a choice to sit idle as a spectator, but keep actively working to promote this new sensibility, to promote these new ideas. This sensibility is going to be there in people, but each one will think that they are alone. when this whole thing is manifested, when people keep on proclaiming this is how the life should be, this is what is human being, there should be equality, there should be no violence, there should be real democracy, there should be nothing about human being. When this is echoed here and there and there and there, when the sound goes on getting magnified, that sensibility which is subtly hidden inside each human being will find a commonness, a sense of unity with what is around. So, global crisis that we are talking about is not a new phenomenon. Instead, it is something that has been there, gradually and rapidly moving towards becoming more human society. And new humanism is not to get frustrated with whatever is happening around, not to become hopeless as if nothing is going to change, not to believe in the finitude of whatever is happening around, rather to have a faith in human evolution. Thousands of years, humanity has always evolved, overcoming pain and suffering, fighting against the forces of the nature and fighting against forces imposed by other members of humanity, always evolving to become more and more human society. Already things are visible. 1919, so 100 years ago, in Brooklyn is a place in USA, there was a zoo. And in the zoo, in the cage, they had one gorilla, one chimpanzee, and one African American for display. This is what was the state of humanity just 100 years ago. And today, it is not accepted. Till 1918, that is again just 100 years ago, in Texas, there was a law that anyone who is insane, anyone who has gone mentally bad, and women cannot vote. Till 1980, just 100 years ago, humanity, the so-called advanced country, civilized country of United States, believed that an insane and weird human being and women are equal and they have no right to vote. Today is no more the things. Just till 1960, Martin Luther King, when kicks out the whole proposal, I have a dream. It's all about all human beings are equal. Just 50, 60, 70 years ago, apartheid was accepted in South Africa. And how rapidly humanity is changing, moving more and more towards human equality. Today, the perpetrators of violence also have to use language of humanity. They want to stage a war, but also in the name of humanity. Because just a war for the sake of war, they cannot justify. So we are in a brilliant time. We are in a time which is rapidly changing. Change is accelerating every time. All that we need to do is to celebrate that we are at the vanguard. We are the proponents. We are closer to the new changes that is happening in humanity. Irrespective of whatever the doomsdayers say, the human attitude is already growing. That is why the members of this new humanism are not frustrated. They are not suffering. They are forcefully, joyfully promoting this idea of humanization of the earth. So here we discussed about global crisis, what is being perceived today, how it was perceived long ago in humanist movement, and how proposals in the form of new humanism humanist attitude and actively working in the world to spread this around so that those who are having internally can resonate with it and take the things forward. I would just recapitulate the indicators of humanist attitude. 1, human being as the central value. Nothing about the human being, no human being below another. 2, respecting personal and cultural diversity. 3, equality of all human beings. 4, repudiating, opposing all forms of violence non-violently. 5, freedom of belief and thought. And last, the 6th one, development of knowledge beyond what is accepted as absolute truth. When the proponents of new humanism are going to promote this, when they are going to reach out to the world, when they are going to talk about it, obviously the people who are formed in the earlier sensibility are not going to welcome you, are not going to celebrate you. In fact, they are not even going to understand it. Not to be overwhelmed by that, not to be demotivated by that, we need to recognize that we are belonging to the future. And the future is of the humanity. That future is already born. Already most of the people are feeling this internally. With our involvement, with our taking it in the vast areas, that is how it became internationalist. We are going to be just instrumental in it manifesting out. If we don't do anything, still it is going to come out. But we have the joy, we have the satisfaction, we are very happy that we are being instrumental in really opening a new chapter of humanity. Humanity where each human being is getting equal opportunity. Thought of as impossible till yesterday, the world will see it happening tomorrow. We are the people who are going to manage the transition from yesterday to tomorrow. That is the spirit of new humanism. I wish you all this spirit of new humanism in all the things that we do in our personal and social life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Parimal. Please raise your hand if you want to ask any question in just a few minutes. If anybody wants to ask question, please raise your hand and ask. If any ആർക്കെങ്കിലും ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കാനുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ചോദിക്കാം. ഇതുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുള്ള എന്തെങ്കിലും കൂടുതൽ വിശദീകരണങ്ങൾക്ക് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് താല്പര്യമുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ചോദിക്കാം.
Please tell അവർക്ക് മലയാളത്തിൽ വേണ്ടെങ്കിലും
നിങ്ങൾക്ക് മലയാളത്തിൽ ചോദിക്കാം. നമുക്ക് ആ ചോദ്യം ട്രാൻസ്ലേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാം. നോ പ്രോബ്ലം. ഒരു അഭ്യർത്ഥന കൂടി, നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഈ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തെക്കുറിച്ചും ഈ ആശയത്തെക്കുറിച്ചും കൂടുതൽ അറിയണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഫോൺ നമ്പർ പ്ലീസ് നിങ്ങളൊന്ന് ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഫോൺ നമ്പർ പേരും ഒന്ന് തരുന്നത് നല്ലതായിരിക്കും. ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഫോൺ നമ്പറും പേരും. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ആർക്കും
Good evening, sir.
Okay.
My name is
Good
Mudir.
evening.
I'm from Calicut, Kerala. I understood what you said. That thank you for that detailed explanation of new humanism. But my problem is, how do you practically do it? Because you are saying you have no organization. So without an organization and that kind of level, how do you practically, make it practice this humanism?
Okay. Humanist movement has been working now for more than 70 years. And the question that is in your mind was a very important question all along. So a very systematic, a detailed way has been worked out how to bring it practical and reach it to the world. I will explain that, but in the meantime, if there is any other question, we can just look at it and then manage the answer accordingly.
മറ്റുള്ളവർക്ക് കൂടി എന്തെങ്കിലും സംശയങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അത് പ്ലീസ് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഇനി അഥവാ പറയാൻ പറ്റില്ലെങ്കിൽ ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ എഴുതിയാലും മതി. മുനീർ ചോദിച്ചത് ഇവിടെ ഈ ആശയം എങ്ങനെ പ്രാവർത്തിക തലത്തിൽ കൊണ്ടുവരാം എന്നുള്ളതിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ളതാണ്. അതിനെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ള മറുപടി പരിമൾ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് നൽകുന്നതാണ്. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ആർക്കെങ്കിലും മറ്റ് ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ പ്ലീസ്.
മുനീർ ചോദിച്ചത് സംഘടനാ സെറ്റപ്പ് ഇല്ലാതെ എങ്ങനെ കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നതാണ്. മുനീർ വാസ് ആസ്കിങ് ഹൗ വി ക്യാൻ പുട്ട് ഓൾ ദീസ് ഐഡിയാസ് ഇൻ പ്രാക്ടീസ് വിത്തൗട്ട് എ സെറ്റപ്പ് ഓഫ് ഓർഗനൈസേഷൻ ലൈക്ക് ദാറ്റ്.
So now I will respond to that question. Whatever we have discussed as about what is happening in the depth of human being can be called as a doctrine. That this is how things are happening. Of course, we have not discussed the whole of the doctrine, but whatever we have discussed can be called as a part of doctrine. This is good for discussion. This is good for understanding. This, to make it practical, has to be translated in something that is called ideology. So, non-violence and non-discrimination, real democracy, participation by people, right to recall, national integration, all these are a certain kind of translating what we are doing into the form of ideology. And then this ideology can be further translated into something called campaign. For example, just now, convergence of culture has taken this campaign. We are one human being. It is a very, very simplified, practical version to reach out to thousands of people. Now we can imagine somebody in some part of the world, some part of India, saw this message. We are one human being. We are one. Inside him or her, there is a feeling that appeals them. So they come closer with convergence of culture. Who are you? What you are doing? How you are doing? Convergence of culture will say that, okay, we are promoting this. If you like, you can also participate in promoting to others. And then slowly explain them. Actually, more than explaining, share this feeling about human being. So the humanist movement created 5 different organisms to work out to people on society in each different field. Those with political affiliation can translate this ideology in the form of political language. So for that purpose, it's called Humanist Party. I remember 30 years ago, Humanist Party, we did talk about real democracy versus formal democracy. The need for good people to come in power, need for good people, for everybody to come for our common problem things So the ideology, the doctrine was transformed in political ideology, which was in turn translated into campaign. So we take different campaigns in these organisms. Humanist Party for political areas, the community for human development for social areas, convergence of culture for the bringing people together, World Center for Human Studies for educational or academic thing people bringing together, and which is the fifth one?
World without war.
World without war. Now, when world without war and weapons takes out a world march, what is it doing? It is going through different territories. It is talking about the destruction and the damage created by war. So many people internally are also aligned with this. They didn't know what they can do. When they hear the campaign of the world without war and weapon, they can relate, come out, they join. Once they join, we slowly explain them, and eventually they also start realizing that their search, their internal feeling, and this proposal of new humanism is aligned. So this is how it was started in a corner of the world and reached out all over the world with different organisms. An absolute concrete way of translating the main idea into day-to-day life. So the best way for all of us is if you share this attitude, if you share this belief in humanity, if you share this spirit of really working to make the fundamental change in human thing, and we participate, not only participate, we champion one of the organism, and through that, reach out to all the people we know, all the people around us, and explain them about that particular campaign. This is the practical way of reaching to the world.
Thank you, sir.
മറ്റുള്ളവർക്ക് ആർക്കെങ്കിലും ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ എന്തെങ്കിലും ചോദിക്കാനുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ പെട്ടെന്നാവാം. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഈ ഇതിനെക്കുറിച്ച് കൂടുതൽ ഹ്യൂമനിസ്റ്റ് മൂവ്മെന്റിനെ കുറിച്ചോ കൺവർജൻസിനെ കുറിച്ചോ കൂടുതൽ അറിയണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഫോൺ നമ്പർ പ്ലീസ് ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാം. നമുക്ക് പിന്നീടും കോണ്ടാക്ട് ചെയ്യാവുന്നതാണ്.
And meanwhile, we have a guest from abroad, from Chile, Antonio. So I would like to hear some words from him.
Hello, Parimal. Well, thank you very much. That has been a very interesting presentation. Unfortunately, it's not easy in just a few minutes to be able to present the whole viewpoint of universalist humanism and all the different levels or expressions of action. And but I think you manage in that period of time to present a quite comprehensive view. And I understand that there are questions like, for example, the aspects of organization. That means how to bring these type of explanations in practical terms and with enough intensity to large groups of people so that it can have an impact and start to transform the lives. It's a very legitimate concern and preoccupation, especially at this time when history is moving so quickly. Because although we have seen critical generations and moments of critical expressions of violence in different parts of the world in the past, at this stage we seem to be all interconnected so closely. And on the other hand, we have all these means of information, audiovisual and all the other artificial intelligence and all the factors that are pressing constantly over the minds of every single human being. And that is bringing up the level of preoccupation, concern, neurosis. You seem that not being able to find a place where to escape from this pressure in today's world, which in the past, I mean, you have more alternatives. You just went to the country or you climb a hill being a child and had a different perspective. Now you try to go to that hill and it's fully built with modern things and instruments, and you cannot escape anywhere from the pressure. And the pressure obviously has accelerated the crisis to a point that for lots of people it becomes unbearable, unique. But as you say, with very profound faith, and it explains Silo in Letters to My Friends, the process of transformation of humanity, the destiny of humanity is such that it will prevail over any other panicking, immediate, and contingent situation that we may be facing at this stage in the world. And I think you manage in short sentences to present that picture of hope, and that picture that in the end, the values of humanity are going to prevail. And still the question stays of how and what we should be doing and how we organize our priorities in the present context. But that becomes also very different, because you may find a different answer required depending on where you are placed, what are your circumstances, what groups are you in touch, etc., etc. But I'm sure that all of us, we can do an important contribution to move the process in its progressive and evolutionary direction. I don't want to take longer, but thank you very much for that presentation. Lots of fruit of thought.
Anybody wants to talk? Few seconds. Anybody want to share? Pradeep raised his hand.
Can I ask you a question? This is for Mr. Antonio.
Surely.
Can I ask a question to Mr. Antonio, who just spoke about?
Yes, yes.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I think you were talking about the pressures in the world that individuals go through. And I think the whole new humanism tries to address the problem of hatred across the world. I think which is a real issue. There is hatred across the world. There is almost a global hatred of democracy. But what exactly, sir, is your understanding about the way these pressures take place? Is it actually something? How do you actually fight these pressures? How do you fight these problems? Does this hatred come from people? It doesn't come from people, does it? It is in most cases the kind of hatred that we are witnessing today against democracy, against all kinds of humanist movements. They come from centers of power, and they're supported by centers of power. So what kind of an action can we actually think of to react against these powers that be?
Well, I don't know what is Parimal's view about that. I think his presentation, I am sure that he has a good answer in regard to that. Although I don't believe that any of us, we have a solution that is one solution fits all, but really appeal to our internal values and convictions, which is part of the doctrine. And then the application to concrete situations will require an ideological approach and strategies and approaches and different particularities of application. Obviously, other than trying to expand our understanding of humanism and reaching more people with it, luckily the multimedia these days opens to us the possibility of reaching out with our messages as well. As we are having the example today, it's a Sunday afternoon here in Western countries, people tend to sit and to relax, and then we are listening here over 35 or 40 people that are sharing a same way of looking at things, and we can listen to that presentation, and we are educating ourselves about things that otherwise we wouldn't have time, the opportunity to do in the past, because we didn't have these new technologies that allows this. We could use the same instrument for the purpose of disseminating our views and our messages. It's something that comes out improvising at the moment, but I would like to see what Parimal would like to say about it.
What you ask is limited to this understanding of hatred. Hatred is just one of the manifestation of the dehumanized society. While hatred is positively visible, discrimination is taken as accepted. If people in Sudan, as my example, are treated badly, differently than people in America, is considered as accepted. But hatred is visible. This is one perspective. What we are talking about is the crisis is not only just one hatred or one incident or one country. It is in the depth of human being, which is going to work towards a better society where all human beings are equal. This is not just an issue of hatred. It's in our mind thinking that any human being anywhere in the world is not getting equal opportunity. This is unfair. This is the whole idea. So new humanism is much more global than just what we witness today. It is talking about bringing the best of the human being to come out. And the way is not action and reaction. There is some problem somewhere and it is a reaction. It's rather our proactive work to really work in the world for working along the best of the human being coming out. Again, what is the way? Working in the world through organisms, through various campaigns, reaching out different people, clarifying for ourselves, building our own conviction and this understanding. At somewhere, some person asked Silo that what do we do to really educate our children? And Silo replied that it is more important also to educate ourselves. We need to reflect on our own beliefs, our own attitude, our own approach to the fundamental spirit of humanity, and then work together with all others. We are not the only one working in the world. Every person who is in favor of humanity is humanist, and we all work together to bring this change in the world.
Thank you.
And Parimalji, in this context, you must remember the Eddalu Karnataka movement in Karnataka. Actually, it was a campaign started with 8 people, only 8 people. I heard that Yogendra Yadav could initiate that. And what happened through that campaign, movement came out, and the BJP government is no more in Karnataka. They could throw it out without any violence, Yeah. It's a good example. The campaign, it works.
Great, good example. Thank you.
മറ്റുള്ളവർക്ക് ആർക്കും കൂടുതൽ ചോദ്യങ്ങളില്ല എന്ന് പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കുന്നു. ഈ ആശയവും ഈ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തിൻ്റെയും പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ നമ്മുടെ സമൂഹത്തിൽ വളരെ വേഗത്തിൽ തന്നെ വ്യാപിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. നിങ്ങൾക്കും ഇതിൻ്റെ ആകാൻ സാധിക്കും. ഇതിനെക്കുറിച്ച് കൂടുതൽ അറിയാൻ സാധിക്കും. ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഫോൺ നമ്പേഴ്സും മെയിൽ അഡ്രസ്സും ഒക്കെ തന്നെ വീണ്ടും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യുന്നതാണ്. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് താല്പര്യമുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ, കൂടുതൽ അറിയണമെന്ന് ഉള്ള ആഗ്രഹമുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഫോൺ നമ്പർ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാവുന്നതാണ്. പിന്നീട് ഞങ്ങൾ നിങ്ങളെ കോൺടാക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നതായിരിക്കും. Sudhir, if you want to talk something?
Yes.
Yeah, in few seconds, please.
Yes, the few seconds are over.
You take
No, I wanted to take that point forward to the next request. So what happens is that to do any activity, we come together and like our friend spoke on this issue of hatred, we select the issues and we do campaigns. And like Abu said, if campaigns are done well, a campaign started by 8 people can result in the throwout of a government. I mean, which may not be the issue here, but the huge actions can result from what we do. So the request is that let each one put their telephone numbers and email IDs in the chat, and they will receive from the organizers the invitation to the next meeting, which will be a weekly meeting, where the whole issue of how the convergence of culture works and what do we do on the ground on regular basis to take these ideas which have been explained by Parimal so well forward in real ground action, they will be taken up. And that is how the organization would work further. Thank you.
Okay. I think
Okay,
മ്യൂട്ടാൻ
then.
തോന്നും. അല്ലല്ല മ്യൂട്ടാൻ തോന്നും, നിങ്ങൾ പറയുന്ന കേട്ടില്ല, അതുകൊണ്ട്. ഇപ്പോഴും കേൾക്കാം.
ഓക്കെ. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ ഈ സെഷൻ ഇന്നിവിടെ വൈൻഡപ്പ് ചെയ്യാം. നിങ്ങളെല്ലാവരെയും കൂടുതൽ ഈ ഒരു പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തെക്കുറിച്ചും ഈ ഒരു ആശയത്തെക്കുറിച്ചും അറിയുന്നതിനു വേണ്ടി താല്പര്യപൂർവ്വം ക്ഷണിക്കുകയാണ്. കൂടുതൽ കാര്യങ്ങൾ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് മനസ്സിലാക്കാവുന്നതാണ്. വളരെ വൈകിട്ട് ഈ സെഷനിലേക്ക് അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്ത ആളുകൾക്ക് വേണ്ടി ഞാൻ ഒന്നുകൂടി പറയുകയാണ്, ഇതിനെക്കുറിച്ച് കൂടുതൽ താല്പര്യത്തോടെ അറിയാൻ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഫോൺ നമ്പർ ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ തരിക. അതല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഡോക്ടർ അബുയുടെ ഫോൺ നമ്പർ അവിടെ കൊടുത്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. ആ ഫോൺ നമ്പറിലേക്ക് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അയാളെ കോൺടാക്ട് ചെയ്യാവുന്നതാണ്. തുടർന്ന് നമ്മൾ നിങ്ങളെ കോൺടാക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നതായിരിക്കും. ഇതിൽ നന്ദി പറയുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി, ഈ പ്രോഗ്രാമിന് നന്ദി പറയുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി അസീസ് മാഷെ ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നു. അസീസ് മാഷെ, പ്ലീസ്. ഹലോ അസീസ് മാഷ്.
Hello, are you asking me?
Aziz Master from Kozhikode.
ഐ തിങ്ക് എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു പുള്ളി ഇല്ലെന്ന്, പുള്ളി ഇപ്പം ഔട്ടായി.
ഓക്കെ,
നിങ്ങൾ തന്നെ പറഞ്ഞാൽ മതി.
ഓക്കെ. ഈ യോഗത്തിൽ പങ്കെടുത്ത ഇന്നത്തെ നമ്മുടെ ഈ ഒരു സെഷൻ ഇവിടെ നമ്മുടെ ഈ ഒരു ആശയത്തെക്കുറിച്ച് വളരെ നല്ല രീതിയിൽ തന്നെ വിശദീകരിച്ച ഡോക്ടർ പരിമൾ മർച്ചന്റിന് കൺവെർജൻസ് ഓഫ് കൾച്ചറിന്റെ പേരിൽ നന്ദി പറയാണ്. അതോടൊപ്പം ഇന്നത്തെ ഈ മീറ്റിംഗ് ഹോസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്ത ഡോക്ടർ നമ്മുടെ സുധീർ ഗണ്ഡോത്ര, അബു, ദയാനന്ദ് ആൻഡ് ഓൾ അതേഴ്സ്, ഓൾ അവർ മെമ്പേഴ്സ് ആൻഡ് പുതിയതായിട്ട് ഇതിനെ ശ്രവിക്കാൻ എത്തിയ ആളുകളെ എല്ലാവരെയും, അന്റോണിയോ പ്ലീസ്, എല്ലാവർക്കും നന്ദി പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ട് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും ശാന്തിയും ശക്തിയും ആനന്ദവും, പീസ്, ഫോഴ്സ് ആൻഡ് ജോയ് ആശംസിക്കുന്നു. താങ്ക് യു.
Peace, force and joy to you also.
Okay, Parimal, Sudhir bye. People, Nilesh, bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone who
Take
came.
care. We'll have others like this.
Okay, bye.
Yes.